Advisory Committee meeting.
I'm sorry, Chair, can you wait till 7? The recording usually starts a minute or two before 7, just so we can let the attendees in to the webinar. Chair, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. So this is the November 3rd meeting of the City of Albany Finance Advisory Committee meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It is now 7 o'clock, and we'll have a roll call, please.
Yes, so committee member Banker is absent excused, and then I have committee member Papalia. Can you, you're noting that you're here. Committee member Priven.
Here.
Vice Chair Trainer.
Here.
And Chair Carr.
Here. Thank you. The next agenda item is approval of minutes from June 2nd, 2021. I hope everyone's had a chance to review the minutes. If there are any suggestions, changes, or corrections, please so state. If there are none, a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by member Trainer and seconded by Mark Priven, I believe, member Priven. Yeah. Announcements. I guess I'll go ahead and start with the brief announcement that I was able to attend.
Well, we have to vote.
Yeah, we need a roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, you're absolutely right. So first, second, and vote.
Yeah. All right. So committee member Papalia.
Aye.
Committee member Priven.
Aye.
Vice Chair Trainer.
Aye.
And Chair Carr.
Aye.
Motion passes.
And with that, we'll move to announcements. And my brief announcement is that I was able to participate in, I wanted to thank Heather Rowden for inviting all of us to attend the League of Cities training on retirement and funding of retirement plans. It was informative and useful, and I really appreciate the fact that we had the opportunity to listen in on that training. So just wanted to share my gratitude for that. So that's my announcement. Any others?
I just had a question on that. Is that recorded or anything? Because I wasn't able to make the time, but I'm interested to see it.
I think one of them was recorded. I thought I had forwarded it to you, but I will follow up.
I still have a copy. If you don't, I'll send it to you, Mark.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I missed that.
There were a few of them. I did ask about the recordings. One of them, the recording failed for some reason, and then another one I got, and so but yeah, I'll look and see if I can find it.
Okay.
Could you explain it? I missed it, and I missed what it was going to be about. Could you go over again what it was? And
Sure. The League of California Cities had 2 or 3 webinars on pension obligations for the city. One was with Calpers. One was and hosted by Calpers. One was, I think, hosted by the league. And so I had got a notification and I had forwarded it to the committee in case anyone was interested. I'll forward the recording to everyone when I find it.
okay.
You sent me a copy of that, Heather, because I wasn't able to attend it either. So your email to me was from October 21st, 10:49 a.m. with the link to it. So
Perfect.
that helps you find it.
It was October, you said 21st?
Yes.
I'm sure that's a long and just tedious thread of emails that you're going to have to sort through. So, but thank you for stepping up and sending that out again, so folks can have easier access to it. Any other announcements from anyone?
Well, I mention again, I think one of our first sessions, I brought up the fact that there was going to be a referendum on the state ballot that would allow gaming at racetracks, select racetracks around the state as part of a Indian gaming overall referendum, and that Golden Gate Fields would be allowed to have sports betting there. I recently saw a article in the newspaper that confirmed that is going to be on the ballot next year, in November 2022. And it would be something that I'll continue monitoring and bring back to the committee any information about that. Because we don't know how it will affect revenues from Golden Gate Fields.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. I think we are ready to move to public comment. Do we have any public participants today?
Not see any attendees, and we did not receive any public comment ahead of time.
Okay. Well, then we move straight ahead to number 5 on the agenda, which is, I think, presentations from Heather for fiscal year 21-22 first quarter update. Is that ready to go ahead with that, Heather?
Sure. So I don't have a presentation today. I'm just going to, sort of talk about it. Everything is on track. There's really no, items that weren't expected. The one thing that I did point out in the staff report was that expenses are increasing, and in first quarter we have 2 of our largest bills due: our pension obligation, our unfunded pension liability minimum payment, and our insurance contributions to Bay City's Joint Powers Insurance Authority. And those went up significantly from last year, and they're expected to increase significantly year over year. I mean, we've been talking about pensions for a while, and I do plan on putting together another presentation on pensions for the committee at some point. And Bay Cities I'm on the board for Bay Cities as a member for the city. And we had our most recent board meeting last week. And we talked about how just insurance costs are going up across the board because of wildfires and because of flooding and because of hurricanes and because of, all of these weather events. And in addition to the fact that these events are becoming more and more frequent, the cost of certain claims like workers' compensation claims and trip and fall claims and all those types of things, the total cost of those claims is also increasing. And so that's something that the entire insurance community is, looking at and being like, oh, so we do anticipate that will go up again in the next few years. So that's something that we also need to watch out for. And that's really what made up the majority of the increase between, this point last year to this point this year, the first quarter expenses. As far as revenue goes, we're, in a better spot than we were last year. But it's where we're expected to be. We don't get our property tax payments until second quarter, and that's really where the majority of our revenue comes from. So that, and I did want to point out that I do realize that there is a $600 difference between the year-to-date total bottom line on the first page of the report and on the second page of the report. And I scoured that spreadsheet for a very long time before I ran out of time and just had to send it. We'll figure out where that $600 is and adjust that spreadsheet. But I decided $600 out of 5 million wasn't going to make or break us.
There's a couple other little minor things that you might want to correct on that,
Sure.
Since you have a chance to do that before sending it to council. On page 1, the year-to-date budget percentage used for recreation appears to just be showing the annual budget rather than a percentage.
Yeah, that seems wrong, huh?
And that looks like it should be about 21.6%, I'm guessing. And then also on, these are just cosmetic things, on page 2, it says, so the third column from the right is titled fiscal year 2020 to 21 year to date, but that really is fiscal year 21 to 22 year to date, right?
Accurate.
Okay.
This is what happens when I am rushing to get this report out.
I know, and you get so familiar with the schedule that you can't see things like that after a while.
Generally, I try to send it to one of my staff members to review before I send it out, but we've had a handful of turnover, and so it just was not able to get done this time. So I appreciate you pointing that out, and I will make sure to fix those.
Could you repeat that slowly so I can correct it on the report I have printed up?
Sure. It's on page 1 of 25 of the fiscal year 21-22 first quarter update. Yeah. And if you look at the expenditure section, the recreation line item, the farthest column to the right, should be a percentage of budget used, but it's really just the fiscal year, full year budget.
Correct.
And it looks like it's pretty much in line because it's like 21.6% of budget, and you'd expect 25% at this point. And then on page 2, the summary by department, there's that header row across the top. And the third column from the right currently reads fiscal year 2020 to 21 year to date.
Yes.
And that should be fiscal year 2021 to 22 year to date.
Correct.
And that goes through all the pages.
Yes.
Okay.
It looks like a fixed header.
Yeah, it's all of the pages for summary by department.
Okay, thank you.
So is now a good time to ask questions on this?
Mhm.
Okay. So I had a couple questions on the narrative report. So you did point out the increases in expense related to insurance and pension. Had a question on both of those. So on the Bay Cities Joint Powers Insurance Authority, is that a self-funded insurance program that all of the Bay cities participate in?
Yeah, there's several Bay Area cities, Berkeley, Emeryville. There's a handful of fire and police districts in Marin. Then there's, Redwood City and Brisbane, and there's a number of different. And Bay Cities Joint Powers Insurance Authority has their own website if you're interested in finding out like who's involved. And but it is a self-funded insurance JPA that the city is a member of.
Okay. Does that have any sort of a rating or anything like that for expected ability to pay claims and that sort of thing?
They do their annual audit and they have an annual actuarial evaluation done, and I'm not sure about a rating. Since it's not public, it's not really
right.
They throw a lot of numbers at the board every year. So it could be, but I'm pretty sure the audit and the actuarial evaluation are publicly available on their website, and I can send that out to you if you'd like.
That would be good to have. I was just wondering, since the risk management is such an important piece of the financial picture for the city, and with all of the things that are going on, natural disasters and things like that, that it just makes you wonder, what would happen if there were a lot of claims, for flooding, for example, or something like that.
They do an analysis every year. That's part of what the board goes over, is determining what each city's retention should be, determining how much equity is in total in the plan. My understanding is that the target equity is like 200% of, potential total. Like we could basically, when we look at it, we could basically have like 2.5 like catastrophic claims before, they separate it out between general liability and workers' comp. So they look at each of them differently. And we also have excess insurance layers. So the pool is only responsible for so much, and then we buy into additional like pools above that. And
Okay.
for workers' comp, like the Bay Cities self-insures for 1 million, and then from 1 to 2 million, there's a excess coverage pool, and then for it's for 2 to 5 million is IRMA, the Employer Risk Management Association, and then 5 and above you go to Karma, which I have no idea what those initials stand for. So,
and I don't really understand, how this works, but is that fairly typical for municipalities to buy into a self-funded joint insurance type of agreement?
Yeah, the city has been in Bay Cities for quite a while. It's been over a decade. And most of the cities in the area are in JPAs. It gets very expensive when you have to go out and buy insurance yourself, and it puts a lot on staff. Bay Cities, the board hires a third-party administrator to run the insurance plan for us, and they basically do all the work of making sure that we're getting the best rates, seeing what's out there, making sure we have coverage. Like they've come out and, years ago said everyone should start getting cyber coverage and, started offering that. And they've come out with new things. And they also do have a risk assessment portion, but also risk mitigation staff that they have a lot of resources that the city has access to as members of that plan and having this third-party administrator. And if we didn't have access to that, if we just went and bought, canned insurance from different people, we wouldn't have access to those resources.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks for that.
Can I just jump in on something? So I believe my firm does the actuarial work for Bay Cities, as well as Karma and Irma and many, many other JPAs. So I would recuse myself from any decision or whatever that we make about, whether it's a good deal or whether we should look at other options or whatever. But I'm happy to work with Heather or to answer any questions. I didn't look at it. I don't personally do the studying, so I don't, I'd have to brief myself. But if you have further questions about how the pool is financed or that kind of stuff, I'd be happy to either talk to Heather about it or talk to the committee in general.
Okay. I think if we could just get maybe the audit report just to see, how that's run, that would just be helpful. I'm just curious to educate myself on how that piece of of things works. And then I had a separate question, but also relating to first quarter expenses, which has to do with the pension liability payment. So you mentioned that the pension payment had moved from 1.5 to 2.45 million, which is like over a 60% increase in 1 year. And I know that you've mentioned before that there's sort of an increasing pension payment that will be required of underfunded plans. Is that right?
Correct. They moved in 2015 from a 30-year payback period to a 20-year payback period. Payback period is not the term actuaries use. I do not remember what it is off the top of my head, but that's basically what it is. And so basically all of our unfunded liability had to be paid back in a much shorter time. So Calpers knows that is a huge issue for cities, and they've basically done like a ramping up of some of that.
So can you give us some visibility into what you expect the payment will be next year and in the next couple of years after that?
So I go through this every year. We have done, when Calpers comes out with their actuarial evaluations, I put in their 5-year, they only go out 5 years. The city contracted with Bartel and Associates, I don't know how to say the name, to do a much farther reaching valuation. And Bartel and Associates has always comes in saying that we're going to owe more than Calpers says, but Calpers has always come in less than we actually end up paying. So I have a spreadsheet that I'm trying to pull up that kind of goes through all of that, and I update it every year. And I've presented the data in it before, so what I'm about to show you is not pretty. But it basically shows what they think the unfunded liability payment will go up to over the next until 2030. And the spreadsheet's thinking about opening now. So there's a lot of numbers here, but let me share my screen. So the projected payment in Calpers, we have 5 different plans. So this was, this is the total for all of the plans that they think that we were going to pay for 2021. This is what we ended up paying for 2022. And this is what, the green is Bartel and Associates, and the orange is the Calpers valuations. So the Calpers valuations think that we're going to be going up to 2.8 next year, and then 2.9. But the Bartel and Associates thinks that we're going from 2.5, 2.8, 3.1, 3.5. So by the time you get farther out, we're, at $5 million a year instead of 2.5.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
And again, I do plan on bringing more of this information back to you guys in the future.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions. Can you give us an example about the insurance claims that might be covered with the previous issue that we were talking about?
Yeah, so they do both our workers' compensation, which is, anytime anyone gets hurt on the job. But they also do our general liability. So if someone trips and falls on city property, or they also have our auto insurance. So if, there's an accident.
No, I'm talking about the joint powers.
Right. They do all of this.
Okay, that is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the issue with the pension liability, we're going to be discussing that in the next session. The next agenda item about how we scored with the
that's
rating.
We'll be talking about it again in the next section when we talk about the state auditor report.
Very good. I'll wait till then. Yeah, I'm sure we'll discuss that part there. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Or are we ready to move on to 5.2?
Yeah, I had a quick question. Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure I understood it right. Although those 2 expenses were much higher than last year, both the insurance and the pension, they were within budget, right? When I looked at the budget, I tried to figure out which line in the budget they went to, and it looked like they were within what was budgeted this year. So it doesn't mean that we're off of budget. It just means there was a big increase from last year. Is that right? Correct.
And that's why I said that nothing in this was unexpected.
Right. Okay.
Obviously it's something that we want to watch out for. The insurance was slightly over, and that was because karma came back later in the year than we anticipated, with a huge increase that got passed down. And so it was slightly over for that one line, but it's not going to break it.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
And Member Trainer, did you have a clarifying question?
I did. On page 2, the summary by department report, under administration, I'm just trying to get a handle on where the pension liability payment is. And I think it must be in 12 administration salaries and benefits. Is that
correct?
Okay. And then the other expenses, is that where the insurance is, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, both of those are under administration. If you go down to the detail, it's under insurance is under risk management, and the pension is under non-departmental.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, thank you for all your very good questions and good discussion. Heather, let's go ahead and go to 5.2. I'm assuming there's still no public present.
No.
Okay, let's go to 5.2 then.
Okay. 1 second. All right. So 5.2 is an analysis of the state auditor's report that came out. The first iteration came out in late 2019, and it looks like now they're doing it year over year. And it's basically a ranking of 471 California cities, looking at their audit information and applying several different ratings for items that the state auditor determined were risk areas for cities. The state uses this report to see which cities are at highest risk for potential bankruptcy, basically. And any items or any cities that they determine are high risk, they have reached out and they've done a handful of audits at the state level, including El Cerrito, to basically see what's going on and, hopefully try to get them out of that high risk category. I do talk in the report about, the other cities in the Bay Area and where they land. The only one, the Emeryville, San Pablo, and Hercules were the ones rated low risk. I do know that Emeryville has a 50% fund balance policy. So that gave them a much higher score than, pretty much anyone else. But they do that specifically because the majority of their revenue comes from sales tax. And so they are very susceptible to changes in the market. And so they have decided that their fund balance needs to be 50%. And I'll talk about that later, but that's one of the reasons why Emeryville is definitely in the low risk category. But most cities in the Bay Area are in the high risk or moderate risk category. And then Richmond and El Cerrito are in the high risk category. There are 10 categories and they are listed in the report, and I'll go over them all individually. When you look at the report, I ranked it by category and where the state auditor said we are low, medium, and high risk, or low, moderate, and high risk. The part in italics is just copied and pasted from the state auditor's website of what they say this category is. So the ones that we were considered low risk are liquidity, general fund reserves, and Opeb obligations. So when we look at liquidity, this basically means, is your cash tied up in long-term investments, or do you have it available in case something happens? The city currently doesn't have any long-term investments, so everything's liquid. So we got a great score on that one. And that's why it's considered low risk. Now, this is something that eventually, with the transition in treasurer, we might look at to potentially raise additional revenues in bringing in a asset manager and potentially doing some investing. Obviously, it would be, the city currently has an investment policy. We need to look and see, where the state law, we can't go more than a 5-year like bond or anything like that. So nothing's really, but we wouldn't put like everything that we own tied up for 5 years. It would be something that I would come back to you guys and we would, go through and we'd bring in an asset manager and basically come up with a plan with them for how we should invest the funds. Specifically, one of the things that you think about is liquidity. So even if we did that, I wouldn't anticipate that our score in this would go down drastically. General fund reserves, the city has a 25% reserve policy. Now, the state auditor's office considers a 25% fund balance to be a moderate risk, but when we set the fund balance policy, I use the Government Finance Officers Association risk analysis tool to really see our specific situation. What are we looking at? What are our risks? Do we have a diversified revenue? Like, that is one thing that we definitely have going for us. Well, we have a lot of property tax. We also have a lot of other revenue sources. And as we've seen with our sales tax, it's so varied that even when one sector goes down, it doesn't give us a huge hit. So it was determined that a 25% fund balance was right for our city when we set that policy. However, it doesn't necessarily give us a great score with the state auditor's office. So while the state auditor says, oh, you want to watch that, we are watching that. I'm not worried about that. Our Opeb obligations, other post-employment benefits. The only thing that the city offers is the mandatory health insurance contribution covered by Calpers.
Excuse me.
Sure.
OPEB, please explain what it is, and please, in the future, carefully go over these things and don't use acronyms, because I don't understand them, and I don't think anyone, the public, won't understand it.
So it is in the staff report, and I did just say it's other post-employment benefits.
Yes, right there.
So other post-employment benefits include anything that the city offers to retired employees. So in certain cases, cities may have offered health insurance, dental. I have no idea what else they would have offered, but anything that the city offers besides retirement that is given to retired employees. Again, the only thing that Albany offers is Calpers. Retirees are entitled to a minimum healthcare contribution by the city. It's a very small amount. Like I said in the report, it is currently budgeted for $68,000. In fiscal year 21-22, it will go up as more employees retire, but it's not anticipated to go up drastically in the next years. So it's not something that, obviously, the state auditor said our OPEB obligations are low. We got a 10 out of 10 of how low the risk can be.
So if you were looking to juice your risk, for example, the OPEB funding, we're currently scoring 0, and by investing $68,000, we could score a 5.
Yeah, and so I was going to talk about that a little bit later, but yeah, it wouldn't
worth
necessarily. So the $68,000 is the yearly cost. So the actuarial valuation of these benefits is like $3 million over a lifetime or something. I just looked at it, but it was last week. So, but it was around there. So that 5 points is $3 million, not $68,000.
Okay.
So yes, I agree with you. It's not a huge amount. We could, in theory, like you said, like manipulate the report by just pre-funding some OPEB, contributions that aren't that high to begin with. But that's one of those things where this, like I said, in my staff report, the report is a great way for people to say, okay, where do we want to look into? But then once you look into it, like how important is it to our city? So I guess, do we want to look good in the, city, in the state auditor's report, but make that $3 million locked in? Because when you put money away for that, you can't spend it on anything else in the future. It's not like a equipment reserve fund where if all of a sudden you need to spend it on something else, it's general fund money. The city can, the council can, vote 3/5 to move the money. Most other post-employment benefit funding locks itself in. So if you put that money aside, you can never do anything else with it.
I agree. I don't think it's worth it. I thought if it's $68,000 and you get the improvement in the rating, it would be worth it. But for $3 million, it doesn't seem worth it. This seems like a really great tool to me in general, because it's pretty fair in its assessment that we do have some high risk, mostly in pension, but also in the revenue trends, which I didn't see where you talked about that specifically. And so I was curious, why did that get so much worse?
So I have thoughts on that. Do we want to skip around, or do we want to wait until we get there?
You can, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. All right. I promise I will go into that when I get there. So our moderate risk categories are debt burden. The city has been paying down its debt year over year. We don't have, a ton of debt. We did just sign a lease for a fire truck, but that's not a huge amount of debt. We anticipate that we will need to bond in the future for some sewer work potentially. But thinking about that, the sewer work is in an enterprise fund, which the state auditor's report doesn't factor in. So that might not even affect this, which is another reason why this report is only kind of like a snapshot that kind of gives you some little tidbits, but isn't necessarily looking at everything. And I don't think it includes the school's debt. So that might make us a little worse. But that is something that we might potentially have to do in the future, is, think about bonding. That's something I plan on bringing forward a debt policy to you guys for review before going to the council sometime in the next year. And basically saying, what is our debt threshold, besides per state law, but what are we comfortable with and what do we want to use debt for? Do we want to just save and pay cash for everything? Or do we want to leverage low interest rates in addition to, understanding that certain things like roads aren't something that, the person who pays for it right now is going to use for 30 years, the people who are using it for 30 years should be paying for it, potentially over those 30 years. So there's a couple of different things that you want to think about when you think about debt. And we don't have a lot of debt. We have a moderate risk, but we're at a 10.83 out of 15. So there's clearly a lot of downward way to go. But it's something that we do need to think about, especially as we continue to budget a deficit. If we can't, that restricts how well we can save for asset purchases and things like that. And so we may need to rely on debt if we don't have the savings for assets in the future. And that will, if we do end up needing to take out debt, that will obviously push this rating down. Pension funding, this category is a moderate risk, but it's interesting to me how they take, it was like 4 or 5 pension categories and like spread them out. For me, we should be focusing on all of our pension categories. We really need to make sure that we're doing this well. At this point, our pension funding is, besides what is currently in Calpers or in our police and fire pension trust fund, it's all pay as you go. We're not pre-funding our unfunded liability. Now, we don't necessarily have the cash to do that at this point, but pensions as a whole really need to be something that's on everyone's radar. So while the staff report and the auditor report break down the pension categories, I say look at all of it. You know, even if the state auditor is saying our pension funding is moderate, it's something we want to think about, you know, when we think about Albany specifically. So then we go down to high risk trends, and here's our revenue trends. So this is where I start to like look at it and say, all right, you basically just took numbers and didn't take context when the state auditor is looking at this. We've done some, we've changed around how we report things in the past few years, and we've done that a couple of times. In 16-17, we switched from in 15-16, we switched from coding expenses directly to the general fund and reimbursing the general fund from special revenues to coding things directly to special revenues, which made our expenses in the general fund go down and look great. But those expenses didn't go away. But it also brought down our revenues. Then in last year, I switched that around. And so our revenues are going to go up, but those are considered transfers in, and this doesn't look at that. So any of our new taxes, Measure M, that's funding, you know, part of our parks maintenance, anything like if we're transferring in our pension tax to, you know, fund current pension obligations, it doesn't count our transfers in when it talks about our revenue trends. So any special taxes, they don't count it. What they're looking at is property tax, sales tax, the racetrack taxes, you know, everything else that you think about when you think about city revenues. Everything that when you look at the report from 5-1 is under the audit view, you know, the franchise and other taxes, all those sort of things. And so while those have changed, I'm not that worried about it. I'm more worried about the transfers in, which they don't factor. And I know I just kind of word saladed at you. So
can I just ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Because one of the things about this is that you get a score, but the other thing is you're kind of benchmarks against other cities. And it looks to me like compared to other cities, we're not, you know, we're in the lowest 20 to 25%. So we may not be high risk, but we're clearly not comparing well to other California municipalities. So I guess my question on this is like, do we use non-general fund revenues like more than other cities, or like, is there some, and I guess I'd have the same question about pension when we get to questions about pensions, but is there some difference in us versus other cities on these issues?
So moderate, yeah, I'm honestly, in certain things, I'm not sure. Pension obligations, there are definitely some cities that are in a much better place for all pension things. But for revenue trends, I'm not sure, because I know that our property tax revenue grows at a higher rate than, you know, the other people in Alameda County on a regular basis. I know that previously our sales tax was going up at a pretty steady clip, but I don't necessarily think that was a just us thing. I think that was across the board. I know that over the past couple of years, there have been a couple of cities that have passed transaction tax increases. So that would have, factored well for them because their revenue increased. I am not sure where we land. Oh, no, I do know where we land on UUT because we just passed that and we looked at, surrounding areas and, we're pretty much the same as, the surrounding cities on what the rate is. We did just add the tax on water. So that'll go towards our, revenue increases. But I mean, that's the other thing that you need to think about when you look at this category is when we think of revenue increases, a lot of it is just tax increases. So are we really diversifying our revenue and, making our tax base hardier, or are we just taxing our residents? So that's when we will come back. We're currently doing an analysis on the business license tax and thinking about changing it from a tax per employee to a tax on gross receipts, and potentially it being a graduated tax. And so that will hopefully both make the tax more, I guess progressive is the word that we want to use, but it'll, right now a small business is penalized for hiring more people because they get taxed per employee instead of on how much money they get. So, they pay more percentage wise than Target does, right? And so as part of that review, we're also going to think about potentially raising more revenue through the business license tax, but it won't necessarily be on the smaller businesses. So in addition to just how do we break in more cash, it's how do we do it without, just completely taxing everyone, out the nose.
Mm-hmm.
Did that help?
Yeah. So it looks like this study concluded in 2019-20, the years that it's looking at, because I was just sort of looking at the revenues that you presented in the first quarter update, which include 19-20, 2021, and then our budget for this year. And we did have an increasing trend from 19-20 to 2021, but that's not contemplated in this report, right? So we don't get credit for that this year.
So here's the other little fact that they didn't really put in the state auditor report. The first year they did this was for fiscal year 17-18. We hadn't finished our audit yet. So they used our 16-17. Or was it the other way around? It was, the first year they did it was for fiscal year 16-17. We hadn't finished our audit yet, so they used our 15-16, but all of that data is in as 16-17 data. So there's a slight discrepancy in their calculations as well. But yeah, there has been I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. There was a dip at one point, but it was before I got here, and I have not had time to go back and really analyze what went down, except for in like broad category senses. And most of what changes year to year for us is our transfers in. So.
Was there any change in methodology in terms of what was reported in special revenues and would therefore be captured in transfers in versus maybe that was reported directly previously?
I'm honestly not sure. There could have been. When I got here in August of 2018, we hadn't finished our fiscal year 17 audit yet. So I was rushing to finish both the 16-17 and the 17-18 audit. And that was when we there was an issue with the system conversion, and we just kind of pulled the plug. And the state auditor's report does indicate that our 17-18 audit, we have a disclaimer of opinion. We technically have one for our 16-17 too, but they just use the 15-16 numbers. And so some of those numbers are wonky. And when I analyze them, it takes a lot of time because during the system conversion, there were a number of adjustments that went from one account to another. And I have to go back through and figure out, where were things doubled up? And then we just did like lump sum adjustments. So it's going back through basically month to month instead of just being able to take a report and click the button like I can for, the time that I've been here and say.
I was just going to ask, when did you get here and when was the system conversion? So we can sort of look at a dividing line of when we know things are comparable year to year.
The system conversion was in the end of fiscal year 16.
Okay.
Which was like June. So we started using the new system in July of 17.
Okay.
And then I got here in August of 18. And it took a couple months to really, dig in and fix things. So I am 100% confident of anything like January 19 and forward. Anything that's behind there, I have to dig in every time we need an analysis and like go through and remove things and, make sure things were added to the right account and figure out, okay, was all the sales tax really put into the sales tax account or was it put into a different account, and kind of go line by line. So it takes longer for me to analyze it. And so there are certain things where I've just kind of been like, all right, well, a general trend has been this, and currently since, January of 19, we've done this. And that's also where we have a consultant, Avenue Insights or Muni Services, who analyzes our sales tax for us. And so I've relied heavily on them in certain cases to say, okay, where do we think our sales tax will go? And that we use their analysis to inform our budgets. Now, a lot of that went out the window during COVID, and I chose to be more conservative than they really thought. And it turns out we did better than, I thought. We didn't do as well necessarily as they thought, but I definitely wanted to be more conservative. But having them has helped a lot in specifically sales taxes. And our sales taxes were going up. But as far as going back through and identifying the one thing that really is what brought that down, I'm not sure.
Okay. I wanted to circle back to Member Priven. You had a question. I'm not sure it was fully answered earlier. Did you get your question answered?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I think maybe you didn't have you answered as with what the information you had. I don't think you know what a lot of other cities are doing maybe. And so it's hard to answer the question, which is kind of what I was thinking is like, so that's fine.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. And then Member Papaya, I thought you might have raised your hand at one point during that conversation. Do you have a question at this point?
Yes. Going back to page 1, it says overall, Albany went from ranking 205 to 101 out of 471 cities reviewed by the state auditor, one being the most at risk. So this says that we went from being in the bottom half to the bottom quarter. And that's kind of alarming to me. And it appears that the reason for that has been primarily regarding pensions and revenue. But we're in the bottom 22% tile. That's alarming to me. So, and it should be alarming. What do we got to do? The public should know about this before we become El Cerrito.
And that is why I've been bringing to the council and to you guys that our pension obligations are an issue. And we need to, we need to make sure that we are not budgeting a deficit year over year in order to be able to make those obligations. The majority of the issue, the state auditor's report says that the revenue trends are an issue. I don't actually think that unless we continue to spend, unless our expenses continue to increase at the rate that they've been increasing, I don't think that our revenue trends are an issue. But our pension obligations definitely are.
So the only cure for that is to raise money and pay them down? What are our options regarding that?
Well, we may have to, shave expenses in other areas. We need to we need to really analyze any time we want to start a new program and determine whether we have the ability to start that program or whether we need to shift, potentially get rid of one program to add the program that is wanted, or, even potentially think about getting rid of programs in order to make sure that we can meet our obligations.
Well, when you say programs, you mean employees, right?
Not necessarily.
But I mean, the reason why I said that is because it's the pensions that are the liability.
But those pensions,
or our current pensions under control? It's our past pensions that are out of control?
accurate. The
Okay.
state,
Well, that's the kind of stuff, the plain English needs to be repeated so that, I mean, not just for me, but so I can explain it to the public. And so we have past pension liabilities that are dragging us down, and the only way out of that is if people eventually go off the pension, meaning they die, right?
correct.
Or we come up with extra money to divert there without cutting services.
Correct.
Okay.
And again, this is why I plan to bring back a full report on pensions itself to go over, what pensions do we currently offer? What type of benefit are they? Which categories are people in? All of that kind of stuff. But this came up first, and it was asked that I do a report on this, and then I will bring the pensions another meeting.
I think if you wanted to look at this and sort of another way to kind of analyze how the state auditor is estimating this risk, they give you the total points available, right? And part of it is sort of your cash and assets on hand that you have available to pay obligations, right? So that would be liquidity and fund reserves. So that's 40% out of the 100%. So that's huge. And I can only assume that other cities must be targeting more than 25%, and they're picking up more of those 30 points available as a comparison. And then the other thing that's really huge is the pension, right? So there's 25% out of the 100 of the risk scale is in those 4 pension type obligation, pension costs and funding and obligations. And on that 25 possible points, we only get 10.2 of those. So we're just really low on that scale. And that seems to be where there's the most room for improvement. And interestingly, the general fund reserves, we're only kind of hitting about half that target. but they still rank our risk as low there. So it seems like the pension area is clearly, you know, where the deficiency is and where we need to focus everybody.
Right. And I mean, and that's another thing that like you said, the biggest category is general fund reserves. And we only have, 16, almost 17 points out of 30. So that's 10 points immediately, but we don't need any more general fund reserves. If you look at our specific situation, it's not necessary. It would just be hoarding cash to make the state auditor report look better. And so at that point, this again is why I keep saying it's a great report to look at, to say, okay, let's dig deeper to figure out where our issues really are. And you see that we have issues with pension, but when you think about, we have a 0 in Opeb funding, but that obligation is only $68,000 a year. Do we really need to be pre-funded in Opeb or other post-employment benefits? So it's the thing where I agree that the report is good for people to start digging in deeper, but I wouldn't just look at it overall and say, and start having flags go off. I would really look into it and say, okay, where are our actual issues? The state auditor thinks that, if we had $34,000 in the bank, we'd have our score would go up 30 points and we'd be in the top 25%. But that means that we're overtaxing our residents because we don't need that much in the bank.
Wait, how much if we, 30, you said how much in the bank?
So general fund reserves are calculated by saying, how much money do you have saved that is not for a specific purpose, and comparing that to the total expenses estimated for the year.
Right.
So our general fund budget is, hold on, let me pull that back up. When I think 34, it's everything.
I think you meant million. You might have said 1,000.
Oh, yeah, that'd be real low, wouldn't it?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's what
Amazing.
we thought 34,000 done.
Yeah, do it. No, 34 million.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. But this is really the first time I've seen this kind of rating. Okay. And to me, I want to be in the upper half, the good half, not the bad half. So, because I see our city as, fairly affluent in a sense. We have, so I don't understand. I wouldn't be happy unless we were, we had a 250 or whatever it is to be, or 200, so that we could be in the top half. And you say, the whole point of this system is to, I'm going to say it again, set off alarms, high risk in these areas need to be addressed immediately, not we'll think about it. And so, and the public should, I think most of the public would say that they would expect us to be in the upper half. Now, I don't want to be in the upper half by padding things. I do agree with your, that there's meaningful numbers, risk classes, and then there's those that are not as concerning. But when the high risk categories seem to be centered around – 2 things, then we need to, I mean, we need to have more than just have them, studied. And I know, and there's another aspect that someone brought up, thankfully, I forget who it was, that we're just one component of the city overall. The school is the other part. So unlike other cities, we just have one budget, while many cities have a combined budget. Is that right?
Honestly, not sure how that works in California. I will have to look into that.
So, yeah, so in these ratings that we're talking about, well, I mean, we need to have that clarified. So I mean, I know that the school board is grappling with deficit. So some people follow the school board stuff. Some people follow the city stuff. Not many people follow both. Okay. I mean, I just think that's kind of a reality. When you have kids, you follow the school board stuff. If you don't have kids, you're more likely to follow the city budget. And in assessing our overall risk as a city, though, it would be good for us to know how the other half is doing.
What is the size of the Albany schools budget? Do we have any idea?
I do not.
I think this is an interesting but a somewhat theoretical discussion at this point. So I'd like to bring us back to any other questions about the report specifically, and appreciate everyone's comments. And I don't mean to make light of it. I just think it's kind of rhetorical that we're not a city that has that. So we're in a class.
Excuse me, it's not rhetorical when it comes to bonding and our ability to do bonds, because the schools, I think the school, our city as a whole is bonding, or maybe that's another question to understand. Is our bonding rate combined?
I think Heather mentioned that earlier, that they are combined, correct?
Okay.
That was mentioned earlier.
That's right.
Okay. Any other topics, or are we pretty much done with this? And can we move on to the work plan, the discussion 6.1 on the work plan?
I had a quick question, actually. It has to do with bonding. Yeah, so at the end of the report, Heather, you said there's sort of no financial impact. And so I'm just want to know, when folks are looking at, pricing our bonds, do they look at the auditor report, or are they looking at other metrics that are more current and are different?
There are a number of things that they look at. The audit is one of them. Before we made the decision to, in 17 and 18, just tell the auditor we weren't going to be able to get anything else and just give us an disclaimer of opinion, I specifically reached out to one of the rating agencies and said, what is that going to do? And he said, there are agencies out there who go like 5 years without an audit, and the second they get an audit, we're fine. So I think the fact that we, have put policies in place, like a fund balance policy is something that I know that they look at. I know that they look at to make sure that we stick to the fund balance policy and that you don't change it very often without reasons. I know that they look at just overall, how are the city's property taxes doing? Are they going up? Are they, all over the place? I know, so there's a number of different things that they look at when they do their ratings, and that is, the audit is one of them, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. We'll go ahead and move to item 6 on the agenda, 6.1. And this is a discussion of where we are currently in our work plan, and when we might actually have an approved work plan, which is one of the issues that I wanted to just bring back to the committee members, that we're still operating without an official work plan, as far as I'm aware, officially approved by council. So Heather, will you be contacted for scheduling agendizing the FAC work plan with the council, and do you have any updates on when that might be?
If approved tonight, it's scheduled to go on the next council meeting agenda, which is the 15th. Anne, are you still there? 15th. Yes, it is 15th.
December 15th.
Yes.
Okay, great. And then if approved tonight, we would be approving the current work plan that we have already approved as a committee, if I'm not mistaken, and just adding the additional extension of time without changing anything content-wise.
So the format changed. Okay, sorry, my screen keeps freezing. The format changed from what you previously approved to be separated into reoccurring work plan items. What were the other categories?
And there was a rating system of what was a high priority and what was.
Yeah, exactly. Like ratings, and then what's reoccurring, what's one-time work plan items, and
nice to do and essential.
yeah.
So I guess we'll open the discussion with anyone's comments on the proposed work plan. Anybody have anything they want to add to what we have, or questions about the prioritizing, the way that Member Trainer and I worked this together, I think, if I recall correctly. So what you're looking at is work that we've done together for your review.
I really like this still. So I guess the only other question is, if this auditor report comes out once a year, should we put that under a recurring thing? I'm not sure if I saw it there. It's just something that we look at it once a year or whenever it comes out. It seems like, Heather, you do a staff report on it every year anyway. You did one last year, you did one this year. Seems like this committee ought to look at that as you brought it to us.
We plan to have the auditor present to you guys.
I mean, no, the state auditor report.
Oh,
This thing you just did.
Oh,
I'm just saying, should that be a recurring thing?
that's really up to you guys.
Is the audit supposed to be a yearly thing?
My understanding is that the state auditor plans to update this once a year.
Is there a place that as a work, I'd like to get this approved tonight, but if we want to amend it, we would be able to.
Oh, I see.
November 15th. So is there a place in the current work plan where we could envision having an ad hoc report on the state auditor's report when it comes in without substantially modifying the work plan?
Yeah, I understand.
I think there may be a way that we could agree to have that. Just because it certainly is within the framework of what we're trying to accomplish with the work plan to have the information from the state auditor's report, but it's not specifically itemized as an issue that we need to look at. So, but I don't know how people feel about it. If you think it's important that we have the full statement that we want the state auditor's report presented and reviewed and discussed, then we should do that. And we'll just wait until January and get our work plan in due course. And that's
Sorry, I turned my video off because I'm having connection issues, but if you make a motion to add something, we can still pass it tonight and bring it on November 15th. That's not an issue.
okay, good to know.
Okay.
Good to know.
And I would say, that fourth bullet under recurring, the report significant financial short and long-term issues, it could fit under there too. I'm okay with that.
Would you want to try to take a stab at a motion that would accomplish that then?
That we adopt this work plan with the understanding that the review of significant financial short and long-term issues facing the city may include review of the state auditor report.
I second it.
Discussion?
I would agree. I think that's a useful thing. It's a that state auditor's report is a useful document, and I think it helps to really highlight the case that we need to advise the council of, with respect to the pension funding, the looming pension funding crisis, really.
Yeah. And I would like to, I'd support the notion too, but I'd just like to say that this report, among others, because there may be other reports that we have that are floating around that we really should take a look at. We simply don't know what they are yet. So, so it change the language in that way to say that the audit report as well, the state audit report as well, among others, and I think it would be good. So can we have a vote then?
Wait a minute. Are you amending the amendment to include and others?
Yeah, I guess that's a friendly amendment too.
I will accept that friendly.
Okay.
Okay. There we go.
And second, also okay on that too?
I'll second it.
Okay, good. Great. So can we have a roll call vote on that then?
Sure. Also, and I'm going to need your help with writing that one up, just FYI. Yes, roll call. Member Papalia?
Aye.
Member Priven?
Yep. Yes.
Vice Chair Trainer?
Aye.
And Chair Carr?
Yes. Aye.
All right, motion passes.
Okay, so we will then have a work plan presented to the City Council on December 15th. And I would like to invite everybody to log on to that meeting so that we have a good discussion if the council has any questions about the work plan or has any changes that they want to recommend so that we can all be on the same page with that.
And just to clarify, it's November 15th, not December.
Oh, I misheard. Thank you for that clarification. November 15th. In 13 short days. No, 12 short days. Okay, great. Good. Future agenda items. Does anyone have anything that they would like to add to a list of future agenda items? Understanding that our work plan is our driving document.
What would be our next? When would be our next meeting?
Our next meeting is scheduled for January 5th of 2022.
January 5th of 2022.
Yep.
And Heather, would there be something happening then that you would be in terms of a draft or an update or something on the?
So I will bring the quarterly report as I usually do. And then, are we sure it's January?
That's what it says on the agenda.
That is what it says, but I think it's supposed to be February. I'm going to have to double check on that.
Okay.
So
Yeah, the city clerk is indicating that might be incorrect. I cannot get a quarterly report together in 5 days.
right.
So generally I bring the quarterly report, and then I was planning on trying to get information about pensions together at that time. It will depend on whether I can get everything finalized for the audit. But I plan to bring back information about pensions.
That would be great.
When will we get the report from the external auditors about the fiscal year ended June 30th?
That is, we should finalize that by December 31st, and then you'll get the report. If it really should be, your next meeting really should be February 2nd.
Okay.
So
Let's just assume that it is for the purposes of.
yeah, and ideally the auditor will be able to be there. If not, I might potentially ask about a special meeting so that the auditor can present it. Probably, ideally it'll be ready for your, it will be available for your February meeting.
There may be some value in a special meeting, even if it's ready. It could be that it's a topic that we really want to dive into and understand thoroughly, so that we might want to do that anyway.
Yeah, I don't think I'd bring anything else except for if it is your quarterly, just your normal quarterly report. But I don't think I would bring any additional information like pensions or anything the day that you review the audit. I think that would be really long and probably boring for everyone, but a lot of information.
Okay.
I have a request for the next meeting, Heather, that you could come up with a 2022 schedule for all of our meetings, so that we can all plan and understand well ahead of time where those days will fall. You know, unlike other committees that meet like on the first Wednesday of the month and that kind of thing, we I'm not sure, you know, and we worked on a schedule this year, or this last this year, based on trying to make it happen, you know, because we were brand new. But I think it would be helpful if by the February meeting we could come up with a schedule of dates that we could rely on and plan for the 2022.
So your regular meetings are the first Wednesday of the month following the end of the quarter. So, for example, the first quarter ended September 30th. So the month following that was October. So your meeting is the first Wednesday in November. The next quarter ends December. So your meeting, the following month is January. So your meeting would be the first Wednesday in February. The next quarter ends in March. The following month is April. So your meeting would be the first Wednesday in May.
So it'd be May 4th.
May 4th.
Yep. The caveat to that regular schedule is that council and advisory bodies do not meet in August. So that was why we had to move your regular meeting to the last something in July this year. So at your May meeting, we'll talk about potentially moving your August meeting to sometime in July.
See, that's why I don't want to, I mean, people make vacation plans, you know, well ahead of time. So by May, I want to know what my vacation time, I'll know what my vacation is, as many people would. So we would be, that's what I'm trying to avoid. We have
Right.
Where people are, well, I'm on vacation or I'm off to Paris, and that's God bless you. But, you know, it would be great if we could somehow in February come up with a plan that the 5 members could all kind of go, oh, I think we could all be there.
I'll see what is available. It really depends on when other meetings are. And so I will see what I can get for you guys, and we can probably make that an agenda item.
So, yeah.
That sounds great. That sounds great.
We're going to have a July meeting then. There is going to be a July meeting.
Yes, at the end of July sometime.
Because we can't do it at the beginning of August. Got it. Okay.
So this year we held it on July 29th, which was a Thursday, because I'm guessing there must have been some other city meeting on the Wednesday.
Correct.
So
The reason that it happened on that Thursday is because there were 5 Thursdays that month, this July. So it was an extra week where there are no public meetings. So, but next July, there will be a meeting the fourth Monday. The fourth Tuesday, the fourth Tuesday is a AUSD board meeting. Fourth Wednesday is planning and zoning, and fourth Thursday is transportation. So we'll have to look at the schedule and figure out a date that is available for public meeting.
Is the time of our meeting a constraining factor for staff as well? Because I think we could possibly consider an earlier time frame. I'm not sure whether all the members are in agreement with that, but it would be another solution, particularly for the July time frame. So I'm open to that consideration.
That works for me.
I could do that.
Yep, me too.
So it would be potentially like Wednesday, July 27th at 5 p.m. instead of 7 p.m. or something like that.
If that's an open time on everyone. Not, I mean, we're in agreement with that, but the city can certainly consider that as well, city staff.
I'll put something together and bring it back for your next meeting with some options.
Great. Sounds good. Okay, and I will now announce our next meeting is Wednesday, February 2nd. Is that what we said? And that it will be at 7 p.m. That brings us to adjournment. And I want to thank Heather and all the committee members and Anne and all the other staff who support us. Thank you very much. And I look forward to November 15th, seeing you all again when we present our work plan to the city council.
Well, one question on that, you know, on the work plan, we talked about that we would present a report to council on the budget reports. Is that something that we're planning on doing for this November 15th meeting or not yet because we haven't had the work plan approved?
I am assuming that this will just be a presentation of the work plan and approval of the work plan without a report, since we wouldn't really have been blessed to have a report yet. So, does that sound right, Anne?
I'll take it. Yes, that is correct. This is only the work plan. The report on the budget would be in coordination with the budget itself. So like I'll bring the budget to you guys before I bring it to council, and you'll write a report basically agreeing or not agreeing with staff's proposed budget. Ideally agreeing.
Great.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting adjourned. And thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Night.
Good night, everyone.